You're watching the Health Now Nutrition Podcast, advancing our holistic and nutrition industry one story at a time. Presenting your host, Michelle Post.
Hey everyone, welcome to Health Now Nutrition and Saved by Nutrition with the most amazing Kristin Leeper here. I'm just going to give you an introduction of our fabulous Kristin here. She loves working with both men and women to help them rebalance their hormones and promote enhanced mental wellness. She enjoys developing low sugar, gluten-free recipes and provides no-nonsense wellness advice on her blog, What? Nutrition Demystified. She's also the owner and founder of KristinTalksHormones.com and was recently a guest on the Declaration podcast on mental health, where she provided an evidence-based overview of the relationship between nutrition and psychological well-being. I love that you did that. That's fantastic. In her spare time, Kristin loves baking, of course, doing yoga, practicing her creative writing, and honing her language skills in French, Spanish, and German. That is amazing that you speak that many languages. I love it. If you want to get more in touch with Kristin, you can feel free to call her at 613-862-5952, or you can email her at KristinTalksHormones@gmail.com. Again, that's KRISTIN talkshormones@gmail.com. Welcome to the show, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I just love talking with you every time we've gotten together. It's just been so fun. So you are the most recent contributor to the Saved by Nutrition book, which, by the way, everyone is now at the printers. So we will be seeing it mid-July. So, you're going to want to look at that book much more in depth from all of our contributors. So you have such an interesting short story, and I was absolutely floored at the direction that it took. Tell me about your writing experience, about your story.
Okay. I was also surprised by the direction that it took. I knew that coming into this, I knew I'd be getting vulnerable and open about things. I knew I'd be talking about digestive issues, which sometimes are considered taboo. I knew I would be talking about mental health and where my mental health was going. But you really got me thinking about the different ways that having these issues can really spiral into the rest of your life. And so, I really hadn't thought about that as much. I could tell you everything that was going on in my mind, everything that was going on in my gut and the rest of my body. But in terms of the impact that actually had on my life as a whole and just how deep that actually went, as soon as you kind of asked me about it, I started putting all the pieces together of all the different connections that there were and how far it spiraled. And so, I was definitely surprised by that.
Right. It was absolutely amazing going through that with you as well too, because especially when you guys actually start listening to more of the story, you'll get this aspect. Your life could have gone in any direction, and this is the direction that you chose. So that's absolutely inspirational. So you want to get to it?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So give us a share about what was happening for you in your life that was such a tragedy.
So for me, I think probably what starts it all is I had an anxiety diagnosis by a medical doctor when I was 21, and I was given anti-anxieties, and then those caused insomnia for me, so I was given antidepressants. And I also had a lot of digestive issues that actually started at the same time as the anxiety. So we're talking constant bloating. I ended up actually changing what clothes I was wearing because I was just always bloated. So you don't want to be in tight clothes anymore.
Yeah.
Like lots of abdominal pain, horrible constipation, and just like constant discomfort is probably the best way to say it. Like I was just never comfortable in my own body. And I felt like I tried a bunch of things, and I saw, I talked to my doctor multiple times. I saw a gastroenterologist, I was asking questions, and I just never really felt like I was going anywhere. Tried to solve the digestive issues, and either what I tried didn't work, was so hard, I had no idea how to start, or I was kind of dismissed. Like, oh, well, let's just figure out what this issue is, and maybe it'll solve the digestive issues, even if they weren't related.
Yeah. So that ended up giving you tons of anxiety. that you were trying to live a regular life with such high anxiety at such a young age. Like you said you were in school, you were in university at that time. Tell us about what was going on for you at university.
Yeah, so this is the unexpected direction that my story took, because I was binge drinking in university, and it's funny because I didn't really examine it at the time, because it's kind of tied into the university culture. That's just like what you do, right? So many people are doing it.
Call.
Yeah, but for me, the binge drinking was tied to anxiety. I talked about in my story kind of like waiting for the weekend, because you're just waiting for when it's acceptable for you to crack open a drink, to really try and take the edge off the anxiety. And I noticed that once I started drinking, it would be difficult to stop, because you feel so good, you feel so calm, and your brain is like, we need to keep this going. Let's keep going with this. And so, yeah, there was definitely, like problematic behavior related to drinking, like using it as self-medication, using it to take the anxiety off, and then you're finally relaxed. So then it becomes a problem of having too much. And of course, as we know as nutritionists, I mean, if you drink enough to have a hangover, hangovers are notorious for potentially causing anxiety. So it really puts you in this negative cycle where you're not really solving anything. But yeah, at the time, I didn't really make the association, but I also didn't know better.
Right.
Didn't know what else to do.
Well, and that, like you mentioned, that was the culture at university. And even for the age, whether you're in university or not, it still is quite a culture to go out drinking, especially on the weekends. I think we termed it back then weekend warriors. Yeah, it wasn't unknown for our friends. One individual person would go out and get a case of beer versus even a 6-pack and drink the whole thing, and then thinking that, oh no, I'm still sober.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that you said that, because that's definitely a huge part of it. So what ended up happening for you that kept you moving forward?
So for me, these things lasted for a long time. It was actually almost a decade, from issues first starting and kind of escalating. But eventually a coworker of mine, I was working at a health food store, actually, funnily enough, and a coworker of mine ended up going to see a naturopath. So she had an autoimmune issue that she needed help with. And she was somebody who really knew her stuff. Like, I really trusted her input. And so that ended up inspiring me to go, because I still had all these digestive issues. My mental health had worsened. And so I was kind of like, you know what, I haven't tried this yet. Let's see what happens. Let's try this out.
Right. So just for everyone to know, you are watching Health Now Nutrition, and these are the stories from Saved by Nutrition that is coming out in July. This is the wonderful Kristin Leeper, and you can actually learn more from Kristin if you'd like to email her at kristintalkshormones@gmail.com. That's KRISTIN talkshormones@gmail.com. So you decided to go to a naturopath. And was there something like, what was it at that time that actually made you like really want, were you at your wit's end, or what was happening that at that time that made you actually say, yes, I'm going to do this?
Yes, so I should probably clarify how much it had worsened, because my mental health had worsened. So I mentioned at 21, I had an anxiety diagnosis. A few years later, my younger brother committed suicide. And shortly after that, I was given a depression diagnosis as well. And so those things had happened. And then by the time that we got to when I was working at the health food store and I decided to see a naturopath, I was actually on medical leave from work because I'd come off of my medications. I knew I didn't want to be on them anymore. And my anxiety skyrocketed. My depression was worse. And I actually had this really vivid moment of sitting down with the doctor who approved my medical leave, and they go through what's called your anxiety and depression checklist. And so it's just kind of a very quick way for the doctors to see where your symptoms are at. And he sat down with me after going through the checklist and was like, yeah, you're at an A+. And those are not checklists that you want to be getting an A+ on. So it was, and he he gave me, I ended up taking 2 leaves before I actually left that job. Like 2 months worth of leave, sorry, but he was ready to approve my leave immediately. Like he was like, if you don't want to go in tomorrow, I will give you, I will give you the time off. So that was a pretty big wake up call for just how serious it was.
Wow.
To have somebody else and somebody you trust who is fantastic, like somebody you trust sit with you and kind of say, hey, this situation isn't okay.
Yeah. Wow. And actually, that's really good that they actually said that this is not okay.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Right. Yeah, because you don't get that much from the medical community. Yeah. So you were working at the health store and you were given this opportunity to leave right then and there. But a coworker instead said, I have to go and deal with their issue. And so you said, I have to try something?
Yeah. So I ended up going to see the naturopath too. Actually, I believe it was while I was on medical leave. Or I ended up finding, so I initially went and I met with a naturopath and she was good, but she just wasn't the right fit for me. I was finding I was getting a lot of side effects from things she was recommended. I looked at the things she was recommending and they just didn't quite fit with my life. Like we just weren't a match, but I saw a different one.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like this eureka moment. We did a bunch of testing. And so I finally started actually getting some answers to the things that were going on. Instead of being dismissed, I had somebody say, hey, this is actually what's causing it.
Right.
And I know how to fix it.
I'd love to actually interject on that aspect for our wonderful listeners and viewers out there. Just because one doesn't work for you doesn't mean there's not someone who doesn't work for you. Like, so I did the same thing. I went through acupuncturist years ago in my own journey. And the first 3, I didn't get it. I didn't get what they were doing. And then I finally found one that actually understood what my specific needs were. And they worked with me just beautifully, absolutely beautifully. So I 100% agree. Like, if you have to shop around, you have to shop around. Same thing with medical doctors. If the one isn't working for you, find someone who does. I'm like 100% with you, Kristin, on that one. So good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. I actually, sorry.
Nope, you.
Yeah, I actually read a quote yesterday, I think, and it was just saying that you should trust your doctor. And if you don't, find a new doctor. And I think that speaks to exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
You're not going to line up with everybody. Not every professional is going to be the right fit for you, but you want to keep looking until you find somebody that you do trust. Because as I found, the difference was amazing.
Right. So tell us a little bit, so you built a relationship that suited you really well with the second naturopath, and what happened at that point?
So we ran a bunch of tests, and we finally started getting into the root causes of what were happening. So we actually found what was going on with my digestive issues. And it wasn't just one thing, it was kind of like a parade of things, I finally—
Parade of digestive issues.
Yeah, I got those test results back and was like, no wonder I haven't been feeling better, because there was this and this and this and this and this, and they were all, influencing each other, or one was making the other worse. Like for example, I had food sensitivities. Quite like a lot of food sensitivities, but I also had some bacterial imbalances. And so, the more that your gut responds to your food sensitivities, and the more your intestinal bacteria can kind of fall out of whack. And, that's just a couple of the things that were going on, but they all really did, spiral into each other.
Right. So you got some food sensitivities, and for the viewers out there that are watching now, can you share and explain a little bit food sensitivities versus allergies versus intolerances?
Yes, it's so confusing. I think even for nutritionists, it's confusing. So a food allergy is sort of that like typical allergy that you think of, like someone eats shellfish and they need their EpiPen and their lips are swelling and their throat is swelling. It's this immediate reaction. And then a food intolerance is, I think of things like lactose intolerance. So that's where our bodies are not digesting the sugar in dairy properly. And that's more like the digestive upset that, usually people with lactose intolerance will know what I'm talking about, but that digestive upset, the cramping, me too, that you feel. And then the food sensitivities, which is what we found that I had, is a delayed immune system response. And basically what happens is your immune system flags a protein in the food. It mistakenly flags it as a threat. So it basically sees, like for me, my body sees wheat protein and is like, oh no, this is an infection. This is a pathogen. We need to attack it. So it stresses your body out. Because it's activating the immune system and they're fighting this thing that they really don't need to be fighting. And it can cause a lot of inflammation and upset in the gut. And food sensitivities can be tricky because I don't feel it right away. It'll be, the following day, and then it lasts for a few days. So they can be tricky to pinpoint because it's not immediate.
Right.
A few months ago, I remember having a horrible stomach ache. I was like, oh, I must have accidentally come in contact with wheat yesterday. But I mean, until you kind of know what you're working with, it's really hard to flag those things.
Yeah. And those proteins are everywhere. So yeah, people who actually do have to stay off of it, they have to look really hard at what they're eating. Absolutely. So you also, I think, mentioned that you were diagnosed with SIBO. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So along with sensitivities, you also have an overgrowth of intestinal bacteria.
Yeah.
That's quite the protocol to deal with that one, isn't it?
Yes. So it's funny they're asking too, because I have probably one more big step to do in the reducing SIBO protocol. This is definitely an ongoing process. And actually it was SIBO for why I didn't fit with the first naturopath, like why we just weren't the right fit. Because the SIBO diet is very intense and very restrictive. You cut out a lot of things in order to make sure that those bacteria don't have anything to feed on. And I just wasn't in a place in terms of like my life and my mental health and my energy to be able to kind of do that diet. So I actually, the practitioner I ended up working with, we did sort of like more of a baby steps approach. Like we cut down on a lot of the things, and I still took a lot of herbs to kill the bacteria, but we did it more slow and steady. I wasn't ready for sort of an extreme approach.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up doing it. That was one of the reasons that I switched. So it's kind of great that you asked that, because I think it's important to find somebody who meets you where you are.
Yeah. Actually, that's absolutely true. So yeah, that's a big one that I've not actually done SIBO yet myself, but wow, like I know people who have, and it's just it is very restrictive and for quite some time too. So now, though, when you started doing this, how long was it before you started noticing changes?
It's a really good question, because I do feel like it's an ongoing process. So when I saw the first naturopath, I saw a few improvements, but we found out the hard way, I'm somebody who has a lot of side effects, so we try one thing that should have worked fine, and then I'd have weird reactions. So it did take some troubleshooting. And I mean, I'm extremely sensitive, so it was very difficult, but that can happen. It was, I don't know if this makes sense, but for me, it was very much like a slow and steady sort of improvement. Like the day by day, I wouldn't notice as much, but all of a sudden I would look back and go, oh my God, the past month has been so different for me. Or like it was very gradual. So it kind of sneaks up on you and you don't necessarily realize. But yeah, I would say, so I started that in, let's say 2017, 2018. And I really noticed actually, it was like this slow and steady. And then this past year, especially, I just started, then it became sort of exponential, and I really, really started to notice, and it just kind of builds on each other. Like you get this positive momentum, and then, then I'm finding that I'm seeing huge improvements now. And it was wonderful writing my story, actually, because I got to look back and have a moment to reflect on all of that and say, wow, we've made a ton of progress, actually.
That's wonderful. Because I also agree, like, and that's why we ask most of our clients to journal. So that way they can see the differences over time. So I'm super glad that you got to experience that as well. Super fun. So tell us now, right now, tell us about your experience with anxiety and drinking and digestive issues.
Oh yeah. So I had no idea that those things were related. Especially going into it, like, the anxiety and the digestive issues started at the same time. And I would never have thought, to mention to a doctor, hey, I have both of these things, because, I had no idea that there was this relationship. It turns out there's a huge relationship. There's a huge connection. I actually have my undergraduate degrees in psychology, and I didn't know about this connection until I started seeing this naturopath, and then went to study nutrition myself. But yeah, it turns out that, if you have inflammation in your gut, if you have inflammation anywhere in your body, but if you have inflammation in your gut, you can end up with neuroinflammation, so inflammation in your brain. We also make a lot of serotonin in our gut, and serotonin is like our happy hormone, which I did not have enough of. And so, but if your gut is inflamed, that production may not be may not be possible in the same way. And I also, I can't remember who I talked to about this, but someone was explaining too that our brain picks up on cues from our body. And so if you have all of this cramping and upset in your gut, it's a sign to your brain that, hey, something's wrong. We should probably stress about something. So that's just a few too. There's so many more. If you're not digesting properly, then you're not necessarily taking in the nutrients that you need, for example, to make different chemicals in the body. And so not just serotonin, but so many things.
Right. Absolutely. And especially those feel goods. Cause I definitely am all about the serotonin.
Yeah.
Definitely. I resonate with your story so much, having a history with Crohn's disease myself. So irritable bowel disease, inflammatory bowel disease. And I even forget what it is for myself now. And as well, I did a lot of drinking. I lived in a lifestyle with family that was full of anxiety and wrought with anxiety. And so I was definitely on the same trajectory as you. So I totally resonate with your story, just 100%. And when I did my own getting off of medications, it was really all about serotonin, just like you mentioned there, right?
Yeah.
Just all about. Plus, I also learned that serotonin can also help repair issues inside the gut. The tryptophan can as well. So super, it's like a catch-22.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. The medications that I was on did affect serotonin, but I felt differently taking them than I did taking a serotonin promoting supplement that the naturopath actually gave me. I definitely, it's a similar process, so you would think that it would feel the same, but it really didn't.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely getting something that your body needs and needs to actually start absorbing. So, and so how's your gut system now?
It is so much better. So much better. I am still ongoing in sort of, making digestion better, but yeah, I don't have the constant pain. I'm way less bloated. Sorry if this is an overshare, but I have way fewer issues with constipation, which I think is important to talk about.
We've had lots of poop talk on it.
Yeah, it's important to talk about. We know this. It's so important. Yeah, I think it's good to clarify too. It's not perfect. I still am figuring everything out, making sure all the SIBO is gone. But it really is night and day. I'm just so much more comfortable.
Nice.
These days. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And tell us about your drinking habits now.
No, that's changed too. No, it's really changed. I do still drink alcohol, but it's very different. Now it's much more about the enjoyment, of being able to, I don't know, you're out somewhere and you want to try their signature cocktail, so you try it, or you're relaxing outside with a nice glass of wine, things like that. Yeah, and I think too, I don't know if this will resonate with you, but I've learned to be much more aware of that kind of voice that you get in your head. So it's oh, we could make another drink. And you're no, I'm good actually. You just like this feeling, and I'm a lot more tuned into my hydration cues these days. So if I have a drink or two, I'm oh, I need to drink 7 glasses of water.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Even for myself, it's good because yes, no, you're not supposed to really have alcohol when you're doing SIBO and that kind of stuff. At this point, if you're on maintenance, that's fine, right? But never get back to that place. Even for myself, it's I'm actually now capable of drinking a full glass of water or something else in between alcoholic beverages, so I'm not hungover for days. So yeah, I get that. I totally get that. I love that hydration cues. That's fantastic.
Yeah. because you're listening to what your body needs now, right? So you know, because alcohol is dehydrating, but if you're never hydrated, you may not notice, but now,
Right. Yeah, it's different once you actually clear all the bad bugs and start putting all the good stuff back in.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, it really is.
So, what would you love to say to people today? Like, what kind of advice or anything that you'd like to say to people today about whatever you want to share?
So I thought about this. I'd say I have two things to share.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So the first one would be just to be an advocate for your own health. You know, I think, I mean, it's so important to trust the experts, but we also live in our bodies day in and day out. And so I think if you feel like you don't have the answers, you know, or you're still having symptoms and you're not feeling better, or you're feeling, unfortunately, like you are being dismissed, to keep asking, you know, and to seek a second opinion if you feel like you need one, you know, because like I remember with what I was dealing with, you know, I got so tired of kind of asking the same question and not really getting an answer that I let it just sit as it was for years.
Yeah.
And so what I would say to somebody else is, as frustrating as it can be, like, keep asking questions and trust yourself. If you feel like, hey, this didn't get fixed, or I still think something's wrong and I still want to know, then to keep advocating, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have felt better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the second thing I think I would say is just, like I said, just to know that there is a relationship between nutrition and mental wellness, because I think a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of that. I mean, like I mentioned, I studied psychology and I did not know how deep it went. So just to know, you know, and if there are, if someone's struggling with anxiety or depression and has gut issues, I think there's a strong chance that those things could be related. And so just to be aware, and that's one of the things nutritionists are here for, you know, to help you figure out what that connection is and then start feeling better.
Absolutely. Well said, Kristin.
Thank you.
Well said. I love that. Be your own advocate. And yes, for some of us, it takes decades before we get down to what the root is and to actually start working on that. And I'm so grateful that you got to it sooner rather than later in life, because you have such a wonderful message to share with what you've gone through. So happy and proud of you. Like, just my heart.
Thank you so much. No, and I think that, you know, you helped me so much kind of bring out the aspects of my story that I was maybe a little bit more reluctant to kind of dig up. And I think it really helped me just work through it, but I think hopefully it'll make it resonate more, kind of like you said.
Absolutely. Because we did work through a lot of emotions as well of writing something like this down. And I think that's a good aspect to actually share, is because I've also felt shame about myself for being quite the drinker back in the day. And yes, I've made quite a jerk out of myself on numerous occasions. You know, so I'm super grateful to be where I am now. And I think that that's par for the course. Most people who drink to that degree, like, we're not in control 100%, right, of ourselves. And so I love that you took control of your life and moved forward. Like, just such a wonderful story. And thank you so much for sharing it with everyone. Like, wow. Don't you agree, everyone? Don't you? So again, this is Kristin Leeper, and you can find her at 613-862-5952 or KristinTalksHormones@gmail.com. And thank you again for sharing with everyone today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and for encouraging me to get this story out, you know, and to share it. I appreciate it so much. And I'm so excited. Right.
And the book, it'll be out. It's coming out mid-July. So if you want a book from Kristin, definitely get in contact with Kristin as well. So
yes.
Awesome. You'll love it. So thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Kristin, and we will see you next time.
You've been watching the Health Now Nutrition Podcast with Michelle Post. For more information on how you can be part of the holistic and nutrition movement, visit www.healthnow.today to book your meeting.